everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
Vince.
Vince, today's question comes from Crazy Charlie MMA, and he says, "Hey Cap!" He doesn't put your name in here. I guess I'll do this show by myself.
Why, Charlie? Why? Why are you so crazy?
I've been having... And why do you like the MMA? I've been having some heated discussions at work about comics as a legitimate medium of entertainment. I often hear the phrase "for children" or "not a real book" a lot. I normally come back with "read Watchmen" and it'll change your mind as it did mine, but I feel the more I use that argument, the less effect I think it has. So I guess my question to you is, what are some arguments you and Vince use? Oh, there you are. There's Vince. To defend comics as a medium.
I have arrived!
10 minutes on the clock. Ah, screw it. What's the point?
The point is that once it hits 10 minutes, and then it reaches like 10 minutes, we can keep going.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, just so that we know when we can keep going, I guess I'll put 10 minutes on the clock. Okay. Wow, 119 hours have passed by since I last started this stop. Okay. Anyway, okay, 10 minutes on the clock.
All right.
What do you think? What do you think, Vince?
I have one sentence that I think will sum up the entire thing for you. This is irrefutable. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're not gonna win, so why bother?
Wow, what a cop-out, dude.
I'm telling you. You know, I meant it as a joke, but in some ways it's true. I mean, essentially, when you get to a point like that, where you're saying, listen, comics are a serious medium, and the people are like, yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for watching Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And there you have it.
But seriously, it's hard to convince a closed-minded person to be open-minded about anything. I mean, it doesn't matter necessarily what you're talking about. You could be talking about things at which we don't even address on this channel. Like, I mean, how many people in the world are willing to kill each other over what religion or what like capitalist or socialist or whatever, communist? People are angry over this stuff. It's a fundamental difference of opinion. Some people are going to take things seriously, some people are not. So it's really hard to say, here is that pearl of wisdom that has all of the awesomeness that is the comics medium, and you cannot refute this. Well, essentially, you could come up with the most interesting and the most valid piece of information that that person can simply refute by being ignorant.
Well, yeah, exactly, and that's where I was going to go with that. Is that it's a matter of simply being ignorant. The difference, I think, between, and boy, you took this in a serious place really quick, didn't you? The place where I think it's different from religion and politics is there are definitely people who go to war and get into giant arguments about those sorts of things, and still do understand and have well researched the other side.
Yeah.
That does happen. Most of the people who just would straight out say comics are not a serious medium, nothing can be said in comics that's worth saying beyond just having people punch each other in the face and doing silly cartoon things, those people haven't read comic books.
Yeah,
those
or they have, or
haven't
they've read the wrong
books.
comic books.
And yeah, exactly. Or you get in, and this is not the first time that we have defended comics on this show. There's you know we've talked to people before who say it isn't that they don't think that comics necessarily don't have anything good to say. They just don't like the medium as a medium. They just don't want to read words and pictures and those sorts of things. So you have different reasons that people don't like the medium.
And so that would be a research side.
Just as you, fair enough. Just as you have different people who don't like don't like cartoons simply because they want to see real people doing things, and they for whatever reason can't suspend their disbelief enough to say it's real in the context of this universe. Well, the same thing happens with comic books, but I think what he's talking about are really just straight up ignorant people who go, society tells me, or at least they think it does, because that's the thing, is that it's different than it used to be. But like, they think society tells them it's what it is, and so they've decided, no, I don't even need to look at it, that's what it is.
I'll give you something that I think might actually be useful to you, as opposed to just, well, those guys didn't answer my question.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
We talk about your question. I think these things are pertinent, so we have to say them. But
and up front, yeah.
But what this really leads us into is, It makes it either the way you tell the story, which of course no way that you tell the story would necessarily be inherently childish or adult, unless you're talking about, and then they went to, whatever, and then the bad man cut off the other bad man's ear. What? That would be a childish way of telling an adult story. But let's have the children's storybook of Reservoir Dogs. Oh, I've just disturbed myself. But essentially what you're talking about is the medium that it's told, or the content. And I think that what people are really looking at is they just associate comic books with, since there's a lack of actual text, I mean, we have lots of speech bubbles, but we have no text, so people don't want to take it seriously, because they assume, they associate highbrow with literature, and they associate the kinetic art form with, or excuse me, prose literature, the kinetic art form with movies, and that people largely ignore that plays even exist anymore. So essentially what I'm saying is that I think what they're doing is an association thing. They understand that that comics might hold things that could be for an adult. They understand that it could happen, but I just think that they are so closed-minded that they don't want to consider the other way. So the only thing that, where I'm going with this is that for a person that says, yeah, comic books are for children, well, does that person enjoy Nolan's Batman? Because that's fairly adult. Did that person enjoy the Watchmen movie? Because that's fairly adult. I would loop this around to things that they might have seen that are a little more omnipresent in the popular culture as seeing an artistic piece as opposed to just a character concept. Like, you can say, you've seen Batman, right? And they say, oh yeah. But have you seen Nolan Batman? Well, that could exist in the comic book.
I don't think this has anything to do with highbrow versus lowbrow. I'm going to ask you this question. Let me be really realistic for a minute. How many of the people do you think that Crazy Charlie MMA is talking about read at all?
I think you have a terrific point, which is, I think that's what makes them hypocritical. Granted, we're just kind of assuming what these people actually are.
Yeah, we don't know who we're talking about. I just think it has more to do with what is for adults and what they think they can take seriously because of what they're used to consuming, not so much what is like real serious literature or not. You know what I mean? Like, I really doubt that that's the argument. How many of these people read?
And here's a terrific example. I think that these people would take books seriously. I think they would take prose literature seriously. I don't think they're going to consume it, but I think they would take it seriously. Here's the deal. There are lots and lots of...
Well, they probably find it boring.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
There's lots
Again,
of
I don't know who
novelists
the them is we're talking about. I don't
the
like...
proverbial they.
By the way, can I just say that I don't like talking about stuff like this in such an abstract kind of way. It's like, you know what I mean? It's really restrictive. Like, I mean, we're trying to answer the question, but I mean, like, I almost wish that we had gotten this question from someone who believed it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I almost
like
wish
somebody
that we
who's
could,
like, comics are for children, defend it.
Yeah, I almost wish that we could answer that person because I don't know who the they is that we're talking about.
Fair enough.
I just want to be objective about this. I don't want this to just be us emoting, going, "We love comic books, so we're defending them as a medium." I'd love to get in a debate with this with someone who actually is knowledgeable and has read a lot of comics, trying to find the value in them, and then says, "No, I still don't think there is any. I think that books and film are where it's at, and comic books should go away." I'd love to meet that person.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I think that an argument that you could potentially use is that a lot of novelists are getting into writing comics. So there's Brad Meltzer. There's a lot of comic book writers who have become novelists. There's a give and take both way. There are lots of comic book writers, Danny Fingeroth specifically, who has done nonfiction books, prose. So,
well, and how acclaimed is Neil Gaiman?
Exactly, and Neil Gaiman does.
Who's written a lot of comic books.
Oh my God. Neil Gaiman's a good example. Brad Meltzer's a great example. There's another guy. Orson Scott Card has written comics.
Oh, Orson Scott Card, great point. Greg Rucka.
Yes. So it's just, there is give and take. There are people who write in multiple mediums. And if we can take one seriously, shouldn't we be able to take the other seriously? Because obviously, they do. Yeah. And it's not just some dude in his basement reading comics. It's a person in the business, and that's why it's significant.
Well, let's explore this for a minute. Why do comics still have this reputation with some people? Why is it that comics as a medium have become more for adults than they even are for kids? Why is it that kids, by and large, aren't even reading comic books anymore, and yet you still get this from the outside, from with somebody like this guy who's reading and enjoying comics and consumes it a lot, but then he gets this but then he gets this kind of outrage from other people who are like, how can you read comic books? Like, why does that still exist?
That's really hard to say. I think a part of it loops into I think people are really thinking about comics from back in the 90s when they're thinking about comics. Now, that's not to say that haven't been things that have existed significantly before then, but most everything is very colorful in comic books, and lots of costumes are highly impractical. And I think that even some of our media, like movies, if you look at Catwoman, they still have things that make no sense. And people say, well, that's what makes it comic booky, because if it's in a comic book, it comes off like that. Hey, I just had a thought. I wonder if these people were to read a comic book, because that's how you do it, if they were to read a comic book, would they have a voice in their head? Because would they have a voice in their head that would make everything come off a certain way? I know that there's a lot of webcomics that I just don't like, because when I read it, it comes off one way, which to me is the way that's written. But my brother loves webcomics. He's totally into them. And what bothers me a little bit about that is he says, well, you're not reading it right. I'm like, well, I'm reading what's written on the page.
Timer's done. Time to finish the video.
And I'm reading what's written on the screen, but in the comic itself. So delivery is an issue. And that's part of the problem with prose. But prose has been for a long time just considered for adults for quite a long time now. Not its inception, but still. So I wonder if maybe there's a delivery issue here. Maybe people just don't have the right frame of mind. Like they don't want to take it seriously, so when they read it, they choose not to take it seriously.
I don't think you get them to that point in the first place. I don't think most of the people we're talking about would even bother to pick up a comic. I think that there are two big things that to answer. Okay, you've answered my question. Now I'll answer my own question with my own idea.
I'm just spitballing here anyway, so here we go.
I think that a lot of it has to do with superheroes. I think superheroes kills it. I think that the problem with the superhero medium is that there really is only so much you can do in it. That's why, and I love superheroes, and of course I talk about superheroes all the time. I have a series about it, but it's true. There's really only so much you can do with that because it's not a genre. It's a subgenre. Now it can be a subgenre of a number of different kinds of genres. You can do science fiction, and you can do fantasy, and you can do crime drama. You can do a lot of different things with superheroes. But at the end of the day, it's a good guy in a costume versus a bad guy. Sometimes, not always, also in a costume, who have a difference in opinion about what the world should be, and then at the end the good guy always wins. The end. That's that's the formula. At the end of the day, there's only so many things you can do with it. So that's why the last 10 years or so, maybe even more now, we've seen so many people not writing in the superhero genre, but trying to find a way to make the superhero genre realistic. Trying to start with the premise of, if superheroes really existed, what would they be like? How many times have you heard that now? And every time you hear that, the writer doing it is presenting it like it's the first time it's ever been considered. Almost every time.
Kind of like Cowboys in Space.
I read the solicitation for a book a couple weeks ago of a new indie book from a company I'd never heard of before, and I forget what the name of the book was, but it was kind of an interesting premise. I sort of want to take a look at it, although I think it's probably aimed primarily at like teen girls, but I kind of want to look at it because it looks kind of interesting. Where it's like American Idol for superheroes. And it's like all these people in costumes show up, and they have to compete like on American Idol, and it's called something Idol. I forget what it's called. But what immediately turned me off until I kept reading, and I almost didn't keep reading about the solicitation, was it opened with, what if superheroes existed in the real world? I'm so tired of hearing that. You know what I mean? And part of the problem, I think, is, so where this relates to what we're talking about. Vince is over here going, why are you talking about this? the problem is that the they have no idea what you're doing there.
I can see my hands.
We did a
Do
video.
tell.
We did a video once where Vince did that for precisely 2.5 seconds on a video. He just did this, and then that was the thumbnail. Anyway, I'm sorry. But where that relates is the medium itself has been trying to validate and has been trying to validate itself forever, and I think that is part of the problem. I think that kind of hurts it, is that the people writing and drawing and doing what they do in the medium have been trying to convince people for years that it's worth doing, and even to this day that still happens sometimes. You know, just based on the fact that this guy asked this question. You know, tells you that there's still. I don't think it's as prevalent as it used to be. I think comics have got to be, you know, looked at as more worthwhile than they didn't used to, at least by Hollywood, because they're making bazillions of dollars off of them. But I think that hurts it. And I think superheroes hurt it, because I think people are getting sick of seeing what they think is the same movie over and over again with superheroes, and I don't think that that's wholly true. I think that that a lot of that in the last 4 years or so since Iron Man and Dark Knight, there has been a lot of envelope pushing in the genre. But the point is, comics are not just superheroes, and you can't convince people of that.
Yeah. You know, part of the deal is that when you look at superheroes and you look at almost anything else, they are fundamentally the same thing. A guy, generally the good guy wins. Let me tell you that. Just in case you haven't ever read a book or seen a movie or read a comic book,
right,
or whatever, the good guy usually wins. The protagonist, as it is. There is a whole lot of hypocrisy that I think that people are completely unaware of when they're judging comic books. Because a superhero is usually the protagonist, and he's going to win like the protagonist of anything. The movie starts out, and you find out it's about Steve. Let's call him Steve Tompkins. Sure, Steve Tompkins is going to win. You know why? Because it's about him. Unless it's a little art house film, the protagonist is probably going to win. Why? Because studios want it to be a film that people can walk away from without having too heavy of a feeling. They want the good guy to win, and studios know this. But an adult is more willing to go see a movie and assume that they don't know what's coming than they are to read a comic book. Actually, since, Kat makes a terrific point, they're probably not going to read a comic book, because why do the thing that you already know how it's going to end? Superhero shows up, beats up the bad guy, superhero wins.
Well, and again, I think there is a sense of it's unsophisticated, but not because books are more sophisticated, because they want to see real people doing what they think are real things. The thing is that you don't get that most of the time in Hollywood either.
Exactly. I feel like the best argument that, and it's not going to work, but the best arguments that you can present are, one, give them examples of sophistication and non-superhero titles. Non-superhero titles specifically. And two, point out the hypocrisy. Say, tell me. One thing, whenever I get into a debate with somebody that obviously doesn't know what they're talking about, what I really like to do is let them talk and then destroy what they just said. And I'd be like, you are wrong for these reasons. And then they come back at you and you say, no, you are wrong for these reasons. Don't make me convince you that comics are worthwhile. I want you to convince me that they're not. And at the same time, I can break it down and tell you why you're wrong.
Sure, yeah. I also like to try to be as objective as I can about something like this. We like to talk a lot about comics as a medium, because they are. And it is really interesting that you still to this day have people trying to say comics just as a medium, no matter what people attempt to do with them, no matter how much blood you put in them, no matter how many chains you put in them, no matter how many zombies you put in them, it still is a medium that is, because it's words and pictures, intended for children. Now, we don't have a medium in our culture that actually is that. Music, not just intended for adults or children. Film, even animation, we don't have anything like that. That really. Although
animation
in this country, we definitely have that.
There is a bias towards it.
There is a bias towards it. So I think that that and comics actually kind of go hand in hand there. So forget I said that. But you know, probably the only one that anybody could have really made an argument about that for, at least when at its inception, like you said earlier, would be video games. That at its inception, video games maybe weren't intended just for kids, but that was who the market was. The market was children, for the most part. And it's not anymore either, because we all grew up and we kept playing video games, because video games are awesome.
Even prose at their inception was intended for women. I mean, and I'm not trying to be sexist, it's just true. It was intended for women. It was considered a womanly thing to do.
Well, you mean novels.
Yeah, novels.
Right, yeah, okay.
Prose.
Well, just because, I mean...
because I say books, and then the assumption is comic books.
No, that's cool, that's cool. I was just thinking, well, the word prose you could use for letters, but, you know, that just means something written down in sentences and paragraphs that is not poetry.
I'm writing my granddad. What are you trying to say to me, son?
But anyway, my whole point in all this, if I can even get back to it, is, that's gonna be the screen grab, isn't it? Stop it! My point in all this is comic books are certainly not just for children, but it's, you know, like I say, it's just difficult to convince anybody that's never really looked at them.
Yeah.
That's the case. But what I was trying to say earlier, okay, I just remembered where I was going with this. It's that comics still are a pretty what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a real broad medium. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody in the way that books and film really kind of ought to be for everybody. Some people, and we've talked about this, really just don't like putting words and pictures together and trying to get a story that way. And so what you have to do is you have to be objective enough to, when you're arguing with people about this, this is my final thought, and this would be what I would suggest. Try to diffuse that, if you're in an argument with somebody, with it isn't that it's too unsophisticated, it's that it might just not be for you. Like the way comics are put together, the way they tell stories. Forget superheroes, forget kiddie comics, forget the fact that a lot of comics are have guys punching each other in them. Forget about all that. Just look at the medium. It might just not be for you.
I had one person tell me, because we were having a discussion about the same thing at one point, and I said to this girl, I really like comics, and she said, I don't, and I said, why not? And her answer astounded me. She said, I do not have the self-control to not look at the next page.
That's great.
And I said, that is truly interesting. She said, it's not that I have anything against them. I know a lot of people do, but and she said, I don't think you're childish for reading them. I just cannot make myself not look at the next page, and then I'm not surprised when it comes. So you ruin the book for yourself. Which, to some extent, that means that reading comics on an iPhone would be perfect.
Would be perfect, yeah, exactly. Well, and I really like some of these readers, and I mean, I don't really prefer to read this way myself. I still like to have the physical thing in my hand, but I do like that a lot of these readers go panel to panel. Like that they jump to the next panel and you don't even see anything else on the page. Like sometimes they'll pop out and then come back in. That could be a problem for some people too, because that might be a bit spoilery.
Yeah.
But no, that's it. But that's a terrific point. I just think that maybe it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. It's really not for everybody. And I've heard of people that don't like movies. I think they're a little strange, but they don't like them.
I don't get that.
How many people say they don't read?
You only grew up with movies. How could we ever understand that?
Yeah. Granted, most people, I suppose if you're raised in a household in which you don't watch television or movies or yada yada.
Sure, yeah. You're probably smarter than me, also.
Because you probably read more.
And I, in a way, envy you.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I don't have a problem with people who don't want to read comics, who it's just not for them.
Yeah, but why?
Video games aren't for some people,
Yeah.
And a lot of types of video games aren't for me. If I didn't grow up with the kinds of video games I played, I'm convinced I wouldn't be a video game person. I don't think I'm the personality type, really for gaming.
Yeah, me neither. I just don't like sitting for hours and hours doing one thing.
Yeah, exactly. But I think what happens is these people where it's just not for them, I think they're trying to figure out why. and and for some reason they feel the need to cut down other people that enjoy them. So my point is that argument is not fair.
Yeah, if you don't know enough, it's not fair to say that it's. That's called a prejudice.
I think it is a prejudice, absolutely.
And we're not talking about the awful old days kind of prejudice. We're talking about just not being able to see past your own presumption.
Back in the olden days when comic book readers used to get strung up by their feet and dragged behind horses.
Ooh.
I don't know. That was before my time, Vince.
Yeah, before my time too. Oh, those. I think we called them. I don't know. I was hoping something clever would come to my head, but it didn't. And I'm going to ignore I said anything. But the comic books. That's kind of where I'm coming down on it. Is you're not going to convince somebody who has a prejudice to consider it from your position. I mean, basically, you just have to dismiss them as not going to take you seriously.
Vince, I found this one to be kind of tough.
I did too.
This was not easy, and we absolutely kind of jumped around a bit and tried to feel out the topic, but it was an interesting discussion.
Free stuff helps. If they're willing, if you can convince them to read something, just give them something. Make sure it's good, and make sure it's probably not about superheroes. If it's too colorful, they're not going to take it seriously.
Yeah, but if people are that violently opposed to it, I think it becomes a lot less of trying to convince a person to get to where they could enjoy it, and a lot more to try to convince them that you're not an idiot for liking it in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's the difficult part, But the other thing too is, I guess you have to decide how important it is to you that some people. Are just gonna think you're a moron. It happens sometimes,
It's because they don't know nothing. It turns out, there's a reference for you that some of you might get.
Well, anyway, thanks a lot for watching Geeks and Not Nerds. I'm sure people are going to have opinions on this. We'd love to see them. And be sure to leave those in the comments below. And if there's anything you'd like us to talk about in a future video, leave that in the comments as well. And thanks as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince, reminding you to support your local comic book store, provided you don't possess the same prejudice as the guys that Crazy Charlie MMA works with.
We'll see you later.